Dene, welcome to She's Wealthy
Christina, so good to see you, love.
for the second time. For everybody listening, we recorded about 75% of this episode, and then we had some tech issues, and Dene is an angel and has agreed to re-record this entire episode.
I mean, such a
So I
pleasure. I'm
appreciate you
like, I
being
would
on
love
here.
to hang out again. Let's do it. Sure.
I know, I know, and I said this the first time, but I've had your book Sovereign Love for probably about a year on my bookshelf,
Wow.
and we were at a retreat in Ibiza together in May, and it was kind of a full circle moment, being like, "Oh my gosh, this is Dene Logan. I've been meaning to read her book Sovereign Love for forever, and now having you on the podcast is like the most full circle moment for me." So I'm very, very appreciative of your time, and everybody is going to get so much value out of this conversation. I feel like dating content in general, I on the internet has become sort of exhausting in a way, and it's very, very black and white, and I love the way that you approach speaking about dating and love relationships in such a nuanced way that it deserves. And I think your perspective on all of this is just very, very refreshing.
Well, thanks, Christina. That means so much to me. And I feel like there was so much alignment in our conversation
Yeah.
before. I'm like, you definitely speak the language. You
We're gonna
understand.
we're gonna create the alignment again.
Yeah.
A question I actually realized that I did not ask you last time was, how did you get into all of this work? Like, was it a
Mhm.
general curiosity or something that happened in your life that made you sort of want to question your own patterns and go deeper?
Yeah, it's interesting. So when you're in the final year of your graduate program, you do a practicum where you really start to delve into working with different populations. And so you'll have a rotation with adolescents and a rotation with, I don't know, just like different like co-occurring disorders or like different things that are happening. And I worked in a community mental health center for my practicum, and
Mm.
one aspect of the rotation was couples work and starting to dive into couples therapy. And it's interesting because I mean, I think there were two aspects that really sort of pulled me into wanting to do this work. The first part was that what people don't talk about in the world of therapy a lot, but I have found to be true, is that people either love working with couples or they won't, like therapists. Like they're just like, couples therapy, because most people are kind of conflict averse to a certain extent. And I think people have an idea that couples therapy is going to be a lot of conflict. I don't experience it that way, but for whatever reason, I loved working with the couples. Like I was like, this is fascinating, and I feel like I'm just like able to tap into something as I'm watching the interactions. And so I started just like taking all the couples. I'm like, no, I love them. Like, give me your couples. If you don't want them, I'll do it. And then also by that point, I had become pretty good friends with my mentor, Esther Perel. And so there was a lot about just couples work that I found fascinating in my conversations with her. So I think I was already drawn to the way relationship dynamics unfold and what's going on beneath the surface. But that
Okay,
work just really
interesting.
sort of solidified it.
Yeah, that's it. When did you start posting content online? Because you were doing this like you were practicing for many years, I'm guessing, and then you started creating content at some point.
Yeah, it's interesting. My friend Vanessa Bennett, who's also a therapist, and I had a podcast for a long time called Cheaper Than Therapy. And, we started it in 2020 and everything was sort of on lockdown. So it was a way that we were sort of like, at the time, so funny because we both had kiddos at home, but we would like go in our closets and we would record the
Connect
podcast.
with another human being.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like our way of seeing each other. But
Yeah.
we also were doing online group therapy, and her partner, John Kim, who has a handle, the Angry Therapist. And so he had the TAT lab, the Angry Therapist lab, which, we didn't even know what we were doing. It was just sort of an experiment in the midst of this global pandemic that was happening. And what it ended up being was just like a really vigorous community. And so Vanessa and I were doing the podcast and we were working with people in groups online. And then when everything started to open up a bit, we were like, we need to get everybody together and start to do retreats. And so we started
Oh,
just
cool.
facilitating retreats. And at some point, I think it was Vanessa that was like, we should start recording just because, I don't know, we might want to do something with them, or it could be a way to make some of the content that we that we teach at retreats more accessible to people who maybe can't get away and join a retreat. And once we did that, we had all of this content, all of these videos, and we just started cutting them up and putting them online. And what was so interesting was how much it resonated, like little snippets of conversations. And we never, because we're therapists, we never sort of show videos of the people asking the questions. It's always sort of our response to the questions, but there's such universal themes that it was fascinating to see how much people resonated with things that they were going through in the clips that we were putting out.
Oh, so interesting. And did you still run retreats alone or with her now too?
Primarily just by myself. Vanessa moved down to Costa Rica, and so she's not
amazing.
here in LA anymore. But yeah, and I do them throughout the year in different, different places and
cool.
workshops and longer ones.
Yeah, I'm curious when you were kind of talking about like treating couples, have you noticed a shift in what kind of like stage of relationship people come in? Because I sort of have always had this perspective with couples therapy, similar to maybe just individual therapy, that it's better to go before there's a problem.
Yeah.
So it's just sort of like getting to know the other person better. Like, don't go when there's a fire.
That's like in my ideal world, like those are my favorite clients. Like the people that come for like premarital counseling or, just like wanting to really be conscious of what we want to create in a partnership and how we want to go about maybe interrupting some of the patterns that we saw growing up, right? Like to me, that is like the best case scenario. But it's interesting because I think most people have the idea that people come to couples therapy when their relationship is really in trouble and there's an increased level of conflict. And certainly that's there to an extent. But I find most of the people that come to couples therapy, it's just because they want to have a really good conscious relationship, and maybe that's just people that are drawn to the work that I do. I don't know, but
it's probably that. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but I feel really fortunate because most of my clients make me feel inspired by what's possible in love versus sort of like, oh, I mean, obviously, everyone's small. I'm like, I'm tired.
Yeah, but, you're like, how are we gonna put out this giant fire? No, it's similar to individual therapy where it's like, obviously I feel like this is just where society's kind of moving, right? Like 10, 15 years ago, it was like you didn't go to therapy unless there was like a big problem, right? Like something that you had to address, a fire of some sort. Whereas now I feel like people are starting therapy just because they want to get to know themselves deeper. And I feel like in an ideal world, it's, to approach relationships the same way makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. I think it's still, I think a lot of times if we're speaking about heterosexual couples, it's a lot of times motivated by the woman in the partnership for them to come in and do the work. But what I find is so fascinating is the man in the relationship, once he's there and starts, the floodgates open and he's like, why did we do this? But, it becomes like one of the few places in life that I think men have an opportunity to really process in that way.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess let's start with, what do you believe that society defines success in a relationship as, and what do you define success in a relationship as? Because I think you have just a beautifully unique perspective on this that's opened my kind of world and understanding.
Oh, thank you. Well, I love this question. Obviously, Christina, you know me a little bit that you would ask it, but I think our society really conditions us to define longevity as success in relationships, right? So if people make it through an entire lifetime together in one relational container, we call that a success. In my book, I joke a little bit about how, you'll go to weddings and it'll be like calling out the number of years two people have been together until we get to the couple that have been together the longest, and everybody cheers and it's like, oh, that's amazing, right? And I'm like, you know nothing about their relationship. Like if they've been fighting and abusive and awful to one another for 50 years, why are we clapping, right? And what's interesting about doing this work and being so fascinated by relationship dynamics in the way that I am is that I just see so many of the things that we've normalized societally as distortions, right? Like that our partner belongs to us. And that's something that I speak about a lot, right? And there's a way that when anything is sort of something that we own, then we start to meet it in a very specific energy. And a lot of times we'll take it for granted or feel entitled to something energetically from that person or our dynamic, right? But I sort of think Relational success is more in alignment with like, am I continuing to grow in this dynamic? Am I continuing to be challenged by you and who you are and inspired? And I say a lot of times I think relationships need three components to be fulfilling over time. And this will be different in different seasons, but I think a couple needs inspiration, respect, and a shared vision. And if we have those three components in our relationship, I find then that's what makes it feel like we are really in something that is, challenging me to be the person that I have the potential to become and supporting me in that.
Yeah. And do you think the approaching relationships from a you belong to me sort of more attached place is sort of like that self-serving energy of like somebody else meeting a need that you're not meeting for yourself, versus in a more ideal world it's like you are a whole, self-realized person and you're finding somebody else that complements you and allows you to grow?
Yeah, I think in most of the orientations of clinical psychology and relational therapy, even still today, I will say, they're very attachment based, and that the goal is to create a secure attachment between two people. And there was a point when I started working with couples that I started working with couples a little bit differently and moved into a more differentiated model. And what that is sort of like all that comes up in our relationship dynamic is the curriculum. It's like grist for the mill. It's really information that is teaching me about my pain points that are coming to the surface and why these things are so difficult for me to tolerate in my partner. But the attachment based model is really sort of, if you think about like what a secure attachment is with a parent or caregiver, it's really appropriate for a child to need that parent to give them guidance in terms of like how to soothe themselves and sort of like co-regulate with that parent. But what ends up happening if we do that with our adult partner, not only do we sort of stunt our growth relationally, not even just like relationally, individually. I feel like so often what I find is we're sort of like hiding out in relationships, and there's a lot of things that we're
Yeah.
not doing in terms of our own personal growth and development because we're just focused on our partner and what they're not doing and how our needs aren't getting met and all of these things, right? But the other thing, and this is probably the most common thing that couples over time come in challenged with, is their intimacy. And so it's really difficult to desire someone who belongs to you. It's really difficult to desire someone who's like a parental energy to you or even like familial energy, right? So I really like to normalize creating that differentiation, and that like, we don't belong to one another, but we are coming together to be inspired by one another and to walk this path side by side. But the minute that we sort of are in that like comfortability, I would say, it starts to feel really familial in a way that I find is just really not great for our relationships over time.
Interesting, because it is also in the like daily choosing of being with that person where that's kind of like the sexy exciting part, rather than like the, I don't want to say like I take this person for granted, but sort of it becomes kind of like boring in a way.
Yeah, it's like it's mindfulness work. And I really
Yeah.
challenge couples to be in that space of like, how would you treat this person if you were just meeting them and you were, trying to bring that swag back into your relationship and like get in there and like
For
land
sure.
the woman, right? Like, because
For
we just
sure.
start to feel really comfortable not doing that. But there's a way that, if we think about what cultivates attraction, it's things like, when that person is unknown to me, or when that person's been traveling and I miss them, or when they do something that they're sort of radiating newness. It's all of this, like they're the differentiated other versus what we've sort of societally normalized as enmeshment. And like, how can we be as close as possible and know everything about one another and finish each other's sentences and have access to each other's phones all day, all the things, right?
Yeah.
And we don't do that in the beginning of a relationship, but that's also why it's, hot and heavy in
At
the
the beginning of a
beginning.
relationship,
And then
right?
over time, it doesn't feel that way because we're just a little bit
Yeah.
too comfortable with each other, honestly.
Yeah. That's fair. All right. So, in terms of like the attachment model, in terms of like insecure attachment, anxious, avoidant, and secure, are you sort of saying that, like, I guess, what is the line between being comfortable in a relationship and being the the kind of traditional definition of secure, like feeling like your
Mm.
needs are being met by that person.
I'm like the worst person to ask about needs, Christina, because I feel like we have just let the conversations about needs like run amok. And I'm such a like word, words
Yeah.
matter. And there are very few things that we are calling relational needs that are actual needs. A lot of times they are relational desires, certainly beautiful to have. But again, this is where we can get into that space of really feeling entitled to things energetically from our partner. And
And where you're
I would
outsourcing soothing.
absolutely. And it's just, it's like the way that I distract myself from discomfort is a lot of times like it's your responsibility to fix it. And that's where some of
Yeah.
we're not doing our own growth work comes in, right? And a lot of times it becomes, how would you negotiate this if this person wasn't here, right? And so people will say, well, yeah, but then what's the point of having a partner? And it's like, to bear witness to this person, not to have them be sort of this parental pacifier that is making me comfortable all the time. And there's so many things about relationships that I couldn't see until I had a child. And the reason I say this is because anyone who's ever had a child knows when they're very little, you are not a human being to them. Like you are just like a need meeting machine. Like they don't care
Yeah.
if it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you've got an 8 o'clock meeting. Like they don't care that you have not eaten, like whatever it is, like of course, and it's developmentally appropriate. But I remember like as my child got older, I would say to him sometimes like, mommy's a human being, buddy. I'm tired, And it's like you genuinely have to remind them of that.
Yeah.
But as I was sitting with couples, I would be like, oh my God, you're just like my child right now. Like you don't care that your partner doesn't have the capacity to meet you and that they're depleted or maybe really going through some emotional stuff of their own or feeling like really challenged by their own work environment. Like you're not even curious because you don't even see them. You're just so sort of caught up in what your needs are and how they're not meeting you there. And it's nobody's fault. It's so much of how we're socialized that this is what relationships should be and do for us. But in that, again, it's really hard to desire your child. And so if I'm constantly, I mean, appropriate, right? But if that's the way our relationship dynamic starts to be over time, you can understand why people are in my office talking about, and we have no desire for one another. It's like, of course you don't.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And what is the, I guess, line between also like feeling like you're in a relationship that is pushing you to grow and triggering you in good ways versus a relationship that is triggering you in quote unquote bad ways, like just the wrong relationship. Like you're mistaking, butterflies for actual just like toxicity.
It's such a good question. I think there's a way that it's fear or love, right? In whatever the moment is. I think a lot of times we are, and this is where the thing of attachment starts to come in. I think a lot of times what we're calling love for another person is just us attempting to maintain an attachment. And a lot of
Yeah.
times the physiological response of sort of panic that comes up because all of us as humans have these two fundamental needs for attachment and authenticity. But attachment will always trump authenticity in the beginning because it's a survival need. And so, a lot of times, what is being activated within us when we feel some of those experiences of abandonment coming up, and it's like historic pain points that come to the surface in our relationship dynamics. We start to feel those abandonment wounds coming up, right? And when we feel that come up, we'll say, "Oh, that's like a clear indication that this is my person, and I need to make this work." And a lot of times, I would say maybe, or there's some shadow work to be done here, and understand why I feel such an internal panic when this person is about to leave or turn away from me, or maybe even can't be with me for a few hours because they're hanging out with their friends, something as simple as that. And I think, in terms of like the question, I think love that is life affirming and in alignment with the truth of who I am. This is like the, unpopular thing for our ego mind. It feels like peace in a lot of ways that I think we're not really conditioned to. And that can be a tough difference to know, in our body, right? Because a lot of times the
Yeah.
anxiety can feel like excitement and butterflies and love and all of that. But I think there's something about just the calm and the exhale that we feel when someone is secure in themselves and who they are, and they're not playing games or trying to manipulate us or whatever the things that happen in our relationships. But I think the calm can be a really good indication of who I become when I'm with this person.
Yeah, and having just like an emotionally safe partner as well. I shared with you last time we were recording that I've struggled historically with more anxious leaning attachment or anxious style. And, you know, I can think back of certain partners I've had where I would have moments of just like needing a little more reassurance. And obviously, there's been a lot of work of me needing to come back to wholeness and safety within myself as I've healed a lot of that. But I've been met with kind of more dismissing of my needs versus I can think of partners that were a really safe space for them to know how to soothe me and to also know like to work with me, right? And I would work with them on their things. So it's also about having a partner that is emotionally healthy in that way as well. So that way your triggers don't become something that sends you into a spiral versus gives you an opportunity to grow.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times what we have to start challenging ourselves to just meet ourselves with grace around and be a lot more honest about is a lot of times what we're calling anxious attachment energy to me is the way that we, as women especially, to be honest, have been conditioned to shut down our intuition. And something about this doesn't feel safe and doesn't feel aligned, and I don't feel met and respected. And I have an anxious attachment though, so it must be me. And you're just being so much and you're
Yeah.
crazy and all of those things. And it's like, maybe I am, but as you said, in a partnership, I want to feel like if I'm feeling something that is making me feel agitated, it's met with an openness and a willingness to, hear me and be present with me in that. And if not, what are we
Yeah.
doing here? Why am I in this?
Yeah. That is such an important point because I see there's so much obviously conversation online about attachment styles, but I see this on both sides and I almost kind of describe it as like gaslighting yourself based on your attachment style because
Yes.
there's been like certain times in relationships where it's like clearly this person's behavior towards me is just like not appropriate or respectful. I'm thinking back of like certain dynamics that I've been in. Like clearly it's not respectful, but I'm gaslighting myself being like, "Oh, but it's just because you're anxious. Like you're just feeling this way because of your own stuff." Or even I have a friend that was, in a long-term relationship and they had taken steps, they're moving in together, and she kind of was suppressing this feeling of like, I don't know if this is the right partnership for me. But she knew historically she struggled with quote unquote avoidant attachment style. And I could feel her gaslighting her doubts in the relationship based on like, well, I'm just pulling away because I'm avoidant.
Yeah.
And it becomes sort of like this weird thing.
I mean, you're so spot on. And I have so many thoughts on this, Christina, but
Let's go into it because I feel like people,
it is
it's like
because I
these
think
labels are harmful.
the labels. I think there's a way that we've really made these attachment styles, identities, forms of identity. And I really don't even talk about them as like attachment styles so much as attachment energetics. And the reason I say that is because they're not fixed states. They will be fluid based on who we are relating to and what's coming up for us. And it can certainly be information in the way that I am responsible for my own energy. And that's sort of like what I write about and work with couples on is like how to be responsible for our own energy. Because what I have found works is the buck stops with me. I can't control another person. Like, good luck with that. It never works. And so if I can just sort of, identify where I am in terms of my energetics, then I can shift my own energy. And we can talk about what that looks like. But the point is we will inevitably create polarity, and we can do it from a wounded space or we can do it from a healthier space. And so if I shift my energy, the energy between us inevitably shifts. But, the other point in what you were saying that I think is so important, and I hear people a lot of times like, oh, I don't know, I just tend to be avoidant. So maybe this is me and I need to make this work. And I'm like, and this is like the unpopular opinion from my perspective, but it's like we're just so conditioned to believe that we all need to be in partnership and that the baseline should be partnered. And if you're not, there's something wrong with you. That a lot of times I'm like, if that's how you feel and you're meant to be with this person at some point, I'm sure you'll make your way back to one another. But maybe it's avoidant attachment, maybe not. I don't know if it matters, but for whatever reason right now, it doesn't feel aligned, and that's information. So maybe your work is to be with yourself for a little while and get curious about why you feel really resistant to this relationship dynamic.
Yeah. And I know there's probably a lot of people listening that like struggle with the quote unquote labeling, but more of the avoidant attachment style. But I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but underlying more anxious tendencies and avoidant tendencies is sort of this fear of intimacy. And I think it took me a while with the anxious side to actually identify that as a fear that I did have, because in being more anxious, in needing to always be there for somebody else, make sure that like they, manipulating the situation in a certain way, it was kind of pulling me, putting my energy towards them and avoiding me being truly vulnerable and intimate with my needs. And I do feel like that is a real thing for people with more avoidant attachment styles, where they sort of go like in and out of relationships hoping for a different result, pulling away with the intimacy, where like that it does create like that emotional flooding.
Yes.
If you agree, where can people kind of like start to address that within themselves?
Yeah. Well, I always say that the anxious and avoidant dance, which is also like the pursuer distancer dance, is just like two sides of the same coin. To me, they are both ways that certainly I would agree with you that we defend against intimacy, but also that we attempt to cultivate an illusion of control, right? So in the avoidant energy, we attempt to control people by keeping them away from us. In the anxious energetic, we control people by keeping them close. But in either instance, I'm not really present. I'm sort of in that space of telling myself a story about what will happen in the future if I don't control this, which I think the work is really to come back into our bodies and titrate into why does it feel so difficult for me to be present with myself, so then I actually can be in relationship to the person in front of me in a present way. And that's where the intimacy is possible. But without that, we're just sort of using them as this object to soothe through again. And I think there are a lot of ways that in avoidant energy, when I feel flooded, I can feel that release valve by like, just get away from me, right? That can feel like a way that I'm self-soothing, in the same way that in anxious energy, we like, I get the text message and I'm okay now, right?
Yeah.
And it's so, yeah, it's, what can we do is, first of all, just, I always like to say that like we will create polarity, but energy doesn't lie. And so we can't sort of manipulate energy. And so if I'm in avoidant energy, which is a lot of times the distancer energy, I speak a lot about masculine and feminine energetics, which are not gendered, but are alive in all of us. And so the wounded masculine energy is the avoidant energy. And if I'm in that energy, my work is to really take up space with what I'm feeling and what's happening for me. So if I'm the person in the relationship that gets flooded, overwhelmed by people's needs, just feel like people are too difficult and it's just easier for me to be by myself, just forget it, always pushing people away, my work is to name that, to say, I'm overwhelmed. I'm telling myself a story that I'll never be enough for you. No matter what I do, you're still going to feel like it's not enough. And that reminds me of my mother, or whatever, like the historic pain point is, right? Like I gotta take the risk of being vulnerable, because that's the healthy feminine energetic. Healthy feminine energy is the part of us that feels like we're not diminished in our willingness to be vulnerable and take up space and be seen, and trust in life enough to allow this other person to come in my process, right? So if I'm in wounded masculine avoidant energy, I need to get into healthy feminine energy. Now, if I'm in that anxious energy, that's the wounded feminine energetic, or the like pursuer energy, right? And so that's the part where I'm sort of outsourcing my safety. I'm not really, boundaried, having a strong sense of me and like my needs, but like also like who I am and what I want for myself. And a lot of times it's like, if I'm honest, this doesn't actually feel aligned so much as like it feels validating when I get that hit of being chosen by this person, right?
Yeah.
And so my work is to be my own healthy masculine container. And like, I have to come back to my tools and how I take care of myself well and what I do in my daily routine that makes me feel good, whether I get that text message or that phone call from that person or not. And I really like lean into those tools, and I trust in my ability to, you know, like, I got me energy, like that sort of self-containment. So the short like cliff notes, I guess, is when we're avoidant energy, our work is to go towards the other person and talk and name the thing. And when I'm in anxious energy, my work is to go inward, and I got to take care of myself. But we can't sort of direct our partner. A lot of times when I'm working with couples, the anxious person will be like, Dene told you, you have to talk. That doesn't work. So we can't like be in control of another person's energy. It's only our own that we can control.
Right. Yeah. And it's all about, I feel like, emotional regulation too, because I can speak for myself on the more anxious side, that when I do feel that pull to go towards the other person, get, you know, something from them. I'm using my hands in a really creepy way on the video right now. Get something from them to feel, yeah, right, to feel that sense of regulation. It's recognizing that I cannot be going towards the other person for that. I need to take time for myself and go inward. And when I'm feeling that, like, that crazy urge to get it from somebody else, like I have historically, it's like, how can I just take a second to like regulate my body, to breathe, to find safety within myself, to check my thoughts and where they're coming from. Are they based in reality, right? And so tactically, I remember this from Ibiza, that you have struggled more on the avoidance side of things. In those moments, is it sort of, it's like going towards the other person and learning how to find regulation in another person, is what you're saying?
Yes,
Or
right. Like it's a little bit just that, like, yeah, like it is actually. See, the void in me is like resistant. I'm like, I'm not going to find my safety in another person, Christine. Once avoid and always avoid. But
I'm like
no.
reaching out to you. You're like, please stop.
I'm like, step back. No, but it's
6 feet distance.
Yeah, it's really allowing ourselves to titrate and to have that felt sense in our body that like I can be seen and people won't turn away from me, right? That there's something really healing for someone who runs more avoidant. I know that times in my life when I have spoken a vulnerable truth to a friend and I've just like known that they are going to like pull away from me, or that like, you know, they're going to reject me, and they've said like, yeah, like whatever you need, I get it. Like, absolutely. I'm sorry that I made you feel that way. And it's like, whoa, like you're still here. Okay. I'm not like, you're not done with me, or whatever the thing is. And if you think about like what causes that energy in people early on, a lot of times it's one, a parent or caregiver that like needed too much from that child. Like, so a lot of times avoidant energy, I'll see a parent that sort of made their child like the stand-in spouse for like
father
the other
figure.
Yeah. And so it's like, you know, the responsibility from such a young age was so big that I felt flooded. I felt overwhelmed by that, right? So someone seeing you and caring about how you feel can feel really healing, as resistant as you can be to it. But it's also that you just like, there weren't people there. So you just like got really good at knowing how to take care of yourself, right? So yeah, it is that like allowing yourself to be seen and held. But again, it's like you can't do it, and this is an either energetic, like looking for the outcome. So when it's outcome driven, then we get into the space of attempting to manipulate energy, which doesn't really work. And so I have to sort of be vulnerable with you and let the chips fall where they may. And if Christina can't see me and can't understand, that doesn't mean anything about who I am, but I want to be in integrity with who I want to be, you know?
Right. Yeah. And it can be really healing also, I can imagine, on the avoidant end, to, you know, be open about yourself and to be held in love. Like, that can be very scary, I can imagine, but also very healing in some ways.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, there's this thing that we do in relationships where it's like we want intimacy and we want truth from another person, but so much of what we do, it's like we have intimacy, I say a lot of times, without intimacy, because as we get close to someone, we know what they can and cannot tolerate hearing. And so a lot of times with one person in the couple, it'll be like, you know, for instance, he's the avoidant one. And there was a time when he was vulnerable with me and he told me something I did that made him feel, I don't know, cut down by me or, not seen or whatever the thing is. And my response was so big and so defensive and so hurt by him telling me that. Well, it's like, well, she can't hold my truth, so I'm never going to do that again. Right. And so
Yeah.
when we're asking someone to open up to us, we really have to do some of that work of staying with ourselves and staying in our bodies and being open to like, okay, where might there be some truth to what they're saying versus just defending against it really quickly.
Yeah. And where does the sort of like anxious wound come from? Like, if generally speaking, if the avoidant tendency comes up when there's a caregiver that kind of just is overbearing, maybe is the right word, where does the anxious side typically come from?
Yeah, I think it's in not having that healthy containment from a parent or caregiver, or sort of constantly being given the idea that like who we were was just too much, right? And so there's a way that like I'm just constantly looking for the person that will like that will affirm that like you are worthy and you are all these things that like when I was young I got some sort of messaging that made me feel like that wasn't the case. And whether that was a parent or caregiver that couldn't show up for me, made promises they didn't keep, and I somehow internalized some sort of messaging about what that meant about me, or just, inconsistency a lot of times can feel like, oh, there's something historic here that's like, and it's a lot of times like, even with parents or bread, I'm like,
Are you
mixing
breadcrumbers?
sentences here. But
Breadcrumbers.
like parent or caregivers that would give
Yeah.
us like breadcrumbs, right? Of like feel good things. And this is so often the case. It's like, I'm not just making this up, that this person who has avoidant energy, like they're giving me just enough a lot of times of that breadcrumbing energy to keep me locked in. And a lot of
Yeah.
times there's something historic about that as well. I would get positive reinforcement from a parent when I took care of everything and like, you're such a responsible little girl, Christina, you've got it
Yeah.
all. And it's like, oh, okay, that's what you want. I'll do that
Right.
for you. Right.
Right.
And so it's all of these ways that we learn early to sort of get hooked on that external validation. And so we
Yeah.
look for our sense of self outside of ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and then you start to sort of resent the other person too, because I can speak from like my own experience that like I always thought, honestly, up until recently, that in processing my last breakup is that like, oh, well, I'm giving so much to you. Like I'm the one who did so much in the relationship, and like you just couldn't like meet me halfway. But then taking responsibility of like, well, actually me giving so much was inherently selfish, and it actually was a kind of, I don't want to use the word manipulation, but like sort of the other person to soothe myself. But the problem with that is that if you play that relationship out long term, it's only creating resentment inside of me because I'm not getting my needs met. And I can imagine like on the other end of that too.
Yeah. Here's another fascinating thing about dualities. So, so often what you're describing in terms of polarity is the overfunctioner underfunctioner dynamic, which
Overfunctioner here.
the overfunctioner tends to be the more anxious, energetic, I find a lot of times. And the underfunctioner, again, because if I'm avoiding, I'm sort of like in that underfunctioner role, right? And I have never met an overfunctioner who couldn't tell me a long story about their relationship with resentment. Now, normally underfunctioners
I'm in recovery also, so.
and listen, we've all been there in our dance with these dynamics, right? But normally the underfunctioner isn't feeling a lot of, well, I don't want to say that because that's not necessarily true, but they're just not in the relationship with what their partner isn't doing so much. Because what's fascinating about when you're the overfunctioner, you sort of feel like if I keep pouring into this person, they will get the message that this is how we love, and they will eventually start to pour into me that way. But it never happens because that person just thinks that's who you are, and you're just a giver, and you just love to give so much. That's just Christina. She's just always giving, right?
And I'm like waiting for the point where like I'm gonna get anything back. Not gonna happen.
Exactly. And so it's sort of fascinating to notice that it's also there's a way that the underfunctioner like plays into this role of like, you like to be the responsible one, you like to be the one who has everything together. It's like it's a dance between the two of us. And so I always say to couples, it's like it's a no fault zone. It's just like we have to understand the dance of polarity and how do we sort of interrupt the way the dance is playing out between the two of us. And in this case, the underfunctioner needs to start functioning and doing some things, and the overfunctioner has to step back and trust that things will get
Right.
done and be handled if I don't do it.
Yeah, and that also is like sort of an unlock in how you start relationships too, because obviously you can, change dynamics throughout the relationship, but from the beginning you really are kind of creating how that relationship is going to look. So if you have needs, like I have needs, like
My name is
have,
Christina. I have needs. I have an acceptance of this now. Yes.
I accept
Beautiful
that I
thing.
have a need. Damn it. Oh my God. It's like from the beginning, you are co creating how that relationship is going to look, And so it is like starting as and there's so much work in this, right? For me, like learning how to actually receive is a massive thing that like I've gone through. And I think a lot of women in general go through. I don't know if that's like wounded feminine energy, right? If you struggle with
Yeah.
receiving.
Well, and it's interesting because as you were saying that, I
Reverse.
sort of had an aha. Like, and this is why I often say they're like the same thing and two sides of the same coin. Because I think you're saying, I have needs. Like I'm in acceptance, and that was a really hard thing for me to receive. I do think for women, we are very socialized to not be in receiving energy, which is fascinating because the feminine is the energetic, even anatomically, that receives. But
Yeah.
avoidant energy so often is like, I don't need anything from anyone. I don't need people, right? So both people are struggling with needs, but it's like
Yeah.
one person believes that it's not possible. Another person is like, I am like hustling to get some sort of, need, like a subconscious desire for it to be there. But in both cases, I would say like both people are really struggling with receiving.
Yeah. Well, it's also kind of, I feel like societally, I see this with women specifically, where it's like we're just over functioning in
Hmm.
general. Like we're doing so much of the emotional labor. We're like becoming, strong and independent. And then that, like the shadow side of that is you just become quote unquote not needing of a man. What can a man do for me? And then we're just like over functioning in this masculinity, and it throws off the balance completely.
Absolutely. And it's so funny the extent to which these energies shift as we're in relationship for a while too, because so often when we're in the dating phase of relationships, we will just be more in that wounded feminine anxious energetic where we really are sort of like reaching for that person. But what ends up happening when we're in that relationship with that person for a while is more of our wounded masculine starts to take over, and we start to be in charge
Yeah.
and tackling it and
Yeah.
making it happen and getting us there, and all of that energetic, which is what really breeds the resentment. But the wounded masculine is what our society really values. All of our sort of, societal, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, like afraid
Yeah.
of failure, competition, and productivity at all costs. Those are all wounded masculine qualities, right? But
Yep.
those are the things that even we as women have adapted so much as survival strategies to
Yep.
certainly be in work and in life, but really because we don't trust in our partners and in relationships that if we don't do it, it will be done, right? So, yeah, I think we all struggle with receiving because we just value wounded masculine culture more than anything else.
100%. Yeah. And that's been like the biggest shift for me in dating is I feel like I have always tied so much of my value to my success and the money that I was making. And in dating, I would lead like that. Like I often joke that like my Hinge profile 2 years ago was like a LinkedIn resume. I'm like, who am I trying to attract, right? And so I would keep attracting these people that like could meet me at a success level, but were emotionally unavailable, or the man that was like more passive that would make me kind of step up into my masculine energy even more. And what's been so healing about like coming out of my last relationship and being really intentional about spending time alone and healing myself is learning how to be more in that feminine receiving energy, and not just with men, but like with life in general, right? Like my value is not based on how much money I'm earning or how productive I am or how much I'm working. Like that story is just so old to me now. It's like I'm valuable because of my soul and my love and what I give to other people, and my ability to kind of like lean back in my power and just like love everything that life is giving me. And I'm just attracting such a different experience with men now too, like attracting more of that like healthy masculine energy that wants to really like provide, but not from a toxic masculine place, just in like, I see your light and I want to protect you, you know?
Yeah. Beautiful, first of all. And I
It's
think,
like journey.
oh, I mean, I'd love to see it. And I think that there's, you know, there's so much about the way that we are socialized and conditioned to really see what you're describing in terms of what is healthy feminine energy as weakness. And I don't know about y'all, but the amount of strength required to trust in life enough to surrender control, whew, like not for the weak. It takes
Yeah.
so much strength to be in that space of trust and allowing and receptivity. And that truly is, to me, like the path of the warrior, to be able to be willing to stay with myself enough that, you know, I don't have to control life and other people and all of these circumstances. And then the floodgates of what we receive, it's just like, look out, game on, you know?
Yeah, you're like, what the hell? I've been missing out on this the whole time, and all I needed to do was just soften. What? It's
So
wild, you
beautiful.
know? It's like you
Yeah.
think that if you're over functioning and controlling and manipulating all the circumstances, that everything will go your way, but that's not actually it. I do have a lot of people listening, women listening, that are kind of in that more, let's say, over functioning, wounded, masculine place.
Yeah.
What are some, let's say they have the awareness, what are some sort of steps that they can take towards healing that part of themselves?
Yeah, you know, I often say a lot of times when we realize that we're at a breaking point with like this wounded masculine armor that we're ready to put down, I like to go back for that little girl that we were. And this is the inner child work that I think becomes such a, you know, just fundamental aspect of our healing, that we will continuously come back to. But there was a little girl that we were before the world started shaping us into who we were meant to be. And it's like, what did she love? What made her feel free and, you know, excited? And just, you know, for me, I think there was a point a few years ago where I was just like, who was Dene before people started telling her who to be, or before she started being interested in boys and like all of these like ways that we're socialized as women. And I was a little girl that just used to love being in my bedroom and putting on Les Miserables or like musical theater and just like singing at the top of my lungs. And so I did that as a grown woman, you know, just like putting
Yeah.
on some musical theater and like going back for her and reconnecting to that little girl that I was. And as I started to find her, I was like, okay, little Dene, what else do you want to do? Right? Like, what
Oh,
next?
yeah.
Right. And so it's like we can recapture some of that childlike wonder, which is ultimately our feminine energy. And people will say to me, you know, if I want to lean more into my feminine, what's like the easiest way for me to get there? And I'm like, where are you having fun? Like, can you bring
Yeah.
some fun in? And a lot of times it seems like, oh, it's not that simple. But for many of us, just having fun isn't that simple. Like giving
Yeah, I know.
ourselves
Yeah.
space to
Right.
like do
Yeah.
something that's not productive or not like something that I should be doing, but just like because it sounds good and it feels like it would be fun. And so where can I lean into that a little bit more, you know?
And like the creativity too, like even finding things like painting or being in nature and connecting to that side of you.
And that's a huge thing
Important.
too with what we were talking about with like some of the anxious relationship energy. A lot of times I'm like, you know, if you think about second chakra energy, which is like that like sexual connected energy with another person, you can channel that into creative life force. And
Yeah.
it's amazing, like the things that we can create. Like, I feel like I wrote a whole book with like just the cultivation of second chakra, like, I'm going in. And it's like really giving yourself an opportunity to tap into that Shakti, that like that life force that is so potent and that we've sort of forgotten, right? So
Right.
where are you being creative and how can you give yourself some of that? And that can be like whatever, painting, just playing, like being in your body, going to a Zumba class, I don't know, whatever you want to do, but allowing yourself, absolutely. I'm glad you said that,
Yeah.
to be in that creative space.
Because that creative sexual energy is, they're the same from my understanding of
It is.
this.
Yeah, absolutely. And you start to get, I mean, it sounds weird to say it, but it is. You start to get some of that energy out that you are channeling towards that person. And then once that energy is moving and it's not so focused on them, you just feel different. And a lot of times you're like, actually, I'm good. Like
Yeah.
if they call it cool or not, but I'm just not so attached to the idea that I like need this to be okay because I've
Yeah.
started to do something creative with it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I wish that like more women really like felt inside of them is how sacred that energy is. And this might be controversial, but just like to stop giving it out because it
Oof.
almost is that like I don't know whether it's like the what's it? Oh my God, what is it called? Feminism movement. I don't know if it's a feminism movement of like sleep with as many people as you want, like sexual empowerment. But I think there's like a line because every time you do that, you're giving your energy away, and that energy is like so sacred. And I feel like if you're giving it out, sort of like without thinking about who you're giving it to, you're depleting yourself of your kind of creative life force energy.
Well, I'm like, I have thoughts, and
Yeah,
I
please,
agree
because
to
that
an
I know
extent.
that's controversial. Yeah.
Well, and I think we were very much socialized, and as many beautiful aspects as there were to the modern feminist movement, we're so unbelievably grateful for feminism. I feel like we always have to give
100%. We just say
that
that. Yes,
caveat, right?
yes.
Like we
100%.
love to have the right to vote and own
Love voting.
property and all
Yeah.
of those things, right? And the
Yes,
big
yes.
and is so much of what that meant for us was that we were really conditioned to embrace our wounded masculine energetic. And so it's like, there's all of these things about like being disconnected from our souls that I don't care like what our gender is. It's like, is that really something that feels good? And I find that over time, that's another place where we're gaslighting ourselves. It doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
not just so much that we're giving our energy because again that's a masculine like externalized experience. What's happening with our womb space, that sacred portal to the divine. And if you think about what the feminine is, it is the energetic that births, that gives like life
Yeah.
through that portal. We are taking in whatever that person's energetic frequency is into our womb space. And if we're doing that with someone who hasn't done a lot of their own shadow work and their own work to integrate whatever their pain points are, again, love it or hate it, but you are taking in that energy every time
Yeah.
you connect with someone. Now, there are ways that we can work with that and transmute that. And so it's not at all to shame ourselves and that we shouldn't do what feels like really true, but I think that
Yes.
like we
Yeah.
got to be in truth with what this is. And a lot of times with the truth of what it is like the validation feels good, the like person and the
Yeah.
attention that I get and that like momentary hit of feel good chemicals, but the
Yeah.
come down doesn't feel so good. And if I'm
Right.
honest with myself, there's
Yeah.
not a lot of ability to like really feel safe and being seen, and like saying all the things, and that I see
Right.
as a lot of times where some of the self-abandonment comes in. It's like I want to be chosen and I want to feel validated in the fact that this person wants me, but honestly I don't really feel honored for the sacred goddess that I am in these
Yeah.
moments. And I think some of that
Yeah.
is important for us to bring back.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. No, I can relate to a lot of that. I struggled with that definitely in like my, late teens, early 20s of like, it's again the overperforming to feel wanted and exchanging my energy just like thoughtlessly, and it really is a different energy to consider yourself as like this divine woman, right? Of like, I am very selective with the energy that I give and who I choose to do that with. And I'm not sure if this is a weird question or not.
No,
Can
weird question.
is can sex be a opportunity for spiritual growth on the male's side? Like, let's say the woman is a little bit more awakened, enlightened, can that trigger something in a man?
Oh, yeah. I think, there's so
You're like,
much
no
that
weird questions.
there's no right questions, but absolutely. I think there's a way that we are really socialized to like, regardless of gender, to just like be numb to what the act of sex is and what it has the propensity to be. Like there's a way to have like really transcendent experiences of meeting one another spiritually through sex that I think we've just so lost track of. And I'm glad you're asking that question, honestly, because I think something I'm so passionate about is the way that we've just lost our connection to soul and made the entire experience of dating and being in relationship to one another so dehumanizing. And if you
So,
look at the way that
yeah.
we are on these dating apps, just sort of like swiping like their baseball cards and like not
The
really being
rules,
connected, yeah,
yeah. Ugh.
to the other soul that I am sitting in front of that has like an entire trajectory of their life experience. And, I have an 8-year-old boy that I talk all the time about like how much I am so passionate about him always knowing how sacred he is and how sacred his body is and how sacred it is for him to connect with any other person. And I talk to his dad all the time about like, we're not doing that, like,
Yeah.
conquering women or whatever, like that's
No.
not going to be a thing. But
Yeah.
that it's just, I think it's really important that like men, there is something that is, it is possible to awaken within a man when he is present and conscious and entering the sacred womb of the feminine. But again, I think if we're numb, we can't selectively numb. So there's all of these ways that when we're cut off to one aspect of our soul's consciousness, that's in
Right.
our bodies and our somatic
Right.
experience as well.
Yeah. And that requires sort of like a de-armoring too, like working on a lot of those fears that we're carrying and allowing ourselves to really be like open to giving and receiving love, which
Yeah.
is a whole journey. So I'm curious for people that are in partnership, let's say. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but how can you keep I guess I'm just going to say this basically, keep the quote unquote spark alive in the relationship, right? Like, how do you maintain that curiosity for the other person?
Yeah. I mean, the word you just used is huge. Curiosity is such a, we get to the point in a relationship where it's like, I know what you're going to say before you even finish the sentence. And a lot of times I will say, I promise you, you don't know your partner as well as you think you do. And there are things that they're not talking to you about because you just haven't been curious in a while, right? And so the biggest thing I think we can do to sort of enliven our relationship is sort of like, how would I treat this person if they weren't mine? If, you know, if God forbid, like they broke up with me tomorrow and I was in conversation with them, how would I speak to them, right? Like, how can I bring that level of reverence and mindfulness and thoughtfulness into our conversations? And a lot of times with couples that are struggling with things like, excuse me, their sex lives and things like that, their intimacy, I will say, do me a favor, like let's put that off the table for a while. I want you guys to go like on 3 hikes this week. And I want you to just like go on a hike that takes some time and, hire a babysitter, do whatever you have to do, but like spend time actually in like discovery of this person that you feel like you know so well, right? Just be so curious. And I'll give them exercises for sort of like how to listen to them in terms of active listening in the way that I might listen as a therapist to really allow that person space to feel really seen and met in the way they're being listened to. But it's like, how can I just be in discovery mode with this person again? Because even if we're bringing it back to like whatever is hot in the beginning of a relationship, you're excited about someone that you're discovering because they're not you. They're that erotic other. They're the person that I'm so curious about. But we lose that when we believe that this person is mine. But at any time, they
Yeah.
could not be. And sometimes like tapping into that can actually be really useful to
Yeah.
remembering that it's a sacred gift to have someone in your life that cares about you and that is walking this path beside you. And how can I
Yeah.
challenge myself to remember that?
Yeah. Not take it for granted. I feel like that also kind of supports needing to just make sure you have your own life outside of the partner, because then it's like you have this whole other thing going on that creates curiosity from the other partner. And even seeing your partner, this sounds really messed up, but I'm just gonna say it anyway, like seeing your partner wanting to be wanted by other people or like out in the world, right? I feel like there is kind of like like a I don't know how to, an erotic thing
There's
to
a
that
stigma.
too. There's a
Yeah,
stigma to that too, but yeah, you know.
absolutely. And I say that all the time. There are a few times that we feel most, you know, in awe of, but certainly the strongest desire for our partner. And it's things like when they're doing their own thing and we're inspired by what they're doing, or when they're traveling and we haven't seen them in a while. And a big one is when I see them through the eyes of another person who wants them. And we
Yeah.
remember they are like that actual other person and not my roommate or my
Yeah.
person that I'm parenting, but they are this whole other person. But you're right, a lot of times doing that work of coming back to myself, and a lot of times when we're sort of in that place of feeling just not inspired by my partner, or I'm like disappointed in my relationship, it's like, and how are you feeling about yourself? Like, are you really feeling like you're taking care of yourself well and you're inspired by what you're doing in your own life and what you've got going on? And normally I find I don't. And if
Yeah,
I
'cause it's a
do,
reflection. Yeah.
if I do some of that work to bring the focus back to myself, I always say the relationship will either rise to meet you in who you're becoming, or it will change form as it's meant to. But a lot of times our work is to focus back inward.
How do people know whether it is a job of looking inward and doing work to potentially help support the relationship, or it's just the wrong relationship and there's no work to be done? It's just the wrong situation.
We always know, Christina.
I know. I'm like, get silent with yourself in the
Right.
jungle for a day and you'll know.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I like, we're joking, and like that's the part of like how we're
Hard.
conditioned to shut down our intuition. There's some part of us, it's like the questioning, there's a lot of information. Like when I am with someone and it is aligned and I am in love and this is my man, like I'm not questioning, right? Like that's just,
Yeah.
and listen, a lot of that is what we were talking about in the beginning, that we're taught to really value the longevity. And sometimes relationships are meant to expire. But if I focus back on myself and really challenge myself to get inspired with what I've got going on, and yes, I can be curious about my partner and where they are, and that's beautiful. But I think sometimes we're just like in fix it mode, and I need to like figure out if this is what it's meant to be or not. And it's like, no, do you a little bit. And if the relationship is supposed to be whatever it's supposed to be, I think it will become clear to you as you continue to do that work on yourself,
Yeah, I absolutely love that. For anybody that's, I guess, dating right now, this is a very general question, but I want, people that are single, that are looking for their partner, to have some like tangible sort of steps that they can take to call in that person, magnetize that person, some tips for them.
I'm smiling because I know from your content that you'll agree with me on
Yeah.
this, but I think
A lot
that
of work.
I think it's a lot of like, if I'm focused on what's not here, then I'm going to continue to manifest not here, right? It's like
Yeah.
the universe doesn't respond to what we want so much as what we believe to be true. So if I am really focused on the abundance in my life and what I'm so grateful for and what I'm in love with about what I'm doing right now, the universe is like, oh, are you in love with like all kinds of things? Here's some more things to be in love with, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I think we can just be in a very like, again, wounded masculine way of meeting, like, I gotta find the person. I gotta figure out when are they gonna be here. I'm tired of
Yeah.
waiting. I've been waiting long enough, right? And
Yeah.
it's like a lot of times that is blocking that chi, that life force from coming to us. And so it's like, how do I just trust that my person's on his way? If he's
Yeah.
meant to, be in my life, he's not going to miss me. And so,
Right.
maybe he's breaking up with the person that's not his person and he'll be here when he's had some time. But in
Yeah.
the meantime, I'm not going to focus my energy there, because it's sort of like, I don't know, it's one of those cliche things that's so annoying, but it's cliche because it's kind of true. It's like you find something magical when you're not focused
Yeah.
on it and when you're not looking for it. And so the more that you can just focus on loving your life as it is,
Yeah.
and trusting that
Yeah.
everything's coming,
Yeah, and
It's
your
hard,
life
but
can change within a split second, you know? Like, I feel like it really is truly like leaning in and appreciating all the places in your life that you have so much love, and you have the trust that everything you desire is coming, and then listening to those little pings of like, oh, maybe I should go to that party that my friend is having, or like I feel inspired to go to this place or do this thing, because that's the universe guiding you towards what you want. And in a split second, it's like you could meet somebody that transforms the rest of your life, whether that's a lifelong partner or an important lesson in some way. It's always kind of guiding you in the right direction. And it's also not to say to not take action, right? Of like being on dating apps if you want to be. I'm not on them, but like if you want to be.
Love that for you. Those of you out there in the wild, wild west of dating apps.
I can't handle them. Are you on them?
Oh my God, no.
No, yeah, I was going to say, I'm like,
boo, like, I feel like get in trouble. I'm like, listen, do all the dating apps of that.
do you, but like, yeah, can't.
But I'm the most introverted person on the planet,
Yeah.
so that literally feels like pulling teeth to like be on a job interview.
Yeah. My thing with dating apps is like, first of all, you know what? I've just become so sensitive to energy that every time I open Hinge, I can feel my frequency lower, like noticeably. And so I was just like, something about this doesn't feel right. And so I just feel like I'm going to meet my person doing what I love out in the wild, or like in some sort of, you know, program, or like whatever it is. So I deleted them.
Will. And here's the thing, and this is like, this is what is unpopular to say, but like if you think about like the business structure of dating apps, they're not actually designed for us to meet our person. They're
they're
designed to
for you
keep us on dating
going.
apps, right?
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like the slot machine. Like when you hit the big one, it's sort of
Totally.
not exactly what was supposed to happen. Now, that being said, I think there's a way that if I am, you know, what we were saying before about healthy feminine energy, if I'm just having fun, and even like going to my friend's party, like you were saying, because it sounds fun, not because like I hear women say a lot of times, like my husband could be there. I'm like, that's still in that space of attempting to control, my love. Like we gotta like surrender, and the universe will not be manipulated. Like it is aware of how you truly
Of what you're doing. Yeah.
right? So it's like surrender means I'm out of when it's not for me to be involved in, but I'm having fun. And that's me in that receptive mode of like my healthy feminine, and everything that I'm meant to experience will come to me. But, and again, like genuinely, I think dating apps, I want to like circle back. It's not that they're a bad thing at all, but I think the looking for my person, like what if I'm just like meeting people and connecting? Like you could make an amazing friendship with someone who's, you know, cousin is the man of your dreams, or whoever, like you don't know, but just being open to the outcome that I may not see coming, you know?
Yeah. And it's like this, I see this with like a lot of women in my life. It's just this attachment to like finding my husband and like putting myself in the place to find the husband. It's like I understand, especially in the context of timelines with women too, like biological timelines can play in, and that desperation can kind of creep up, which I'm sure you have things to say about. But also I posted about this on Instagram the other day of like shape shifting before you even get into a relationship. So like I need to go to the bar because maybe my husband is there, or I need to do this so my husband is there, doing things that pull you away from your authentic self. But it's like if you're living in alignment and, you know, going to yoga on a Sunday morning rather than out on Saturday night, like that's where you're going to meet your person. But like you're starting off inauthentically.
Yeah, I saw that post and I loved that, by the way. So well said. And
whenever you like my dating content, I'm like, yes, I'm on the right path.
I'm like, I'm going to go like back and like double tap it because it was really, really good. But, you know, I feel compelled as the woman in the life stage that I think, you know, as women, what ends up happening is we look back at some of the decisions and the ways that we oriented ourselves in the world as our younger selves, and we can see things so clearly. And I was married for almost 12 years to just the most beautiful soul. But it wasn't until we decided to allow our relationship to change form into a friendship that I really started to get curious about why we as women make some of the decisions that we do. It's what I wrote a lot about in my first book, but there's a way that this thing of like, I gotta get my husband, that we're just so socially programmed. Like your worth is connected to being chosen. And if you're not chosen by a certain age, that means that you weren't worthy of that, and that you are somehow damaged goods. And here's the big thing that I hear a lot of times about like the biological clocks, but I want to have a family. And you want to be so intentional with who you are having a family with, because
Oh,
ladies, my love,
that.
there is not much you can do to make your life more challenging than having a child with the wrong person.
Oh,
And, there's things that we just never think about until we're like in that stage of life. And if this were a relationship that doesn't work out for whatever reason, then I am co-parenting with someone that is very difficult to co-parent with. And my child is half the time with some other,
yeah.
dynamics. And I'm really fortunate that like my kid's dad is like amazing and we're aligned in a lot of ways. And I love his girlfriend, but I see a lot of instances with couples that I work with where that's not the case. And I feel like, me and my like big sister mode, I'm like, ladies, I need you to hear me. It's like when it's justified, absolutely. I love love. I love partnership. I love the idea of starting a family with someone when it's so aligned and beautiful. But please do not let our societal programming and the extent to which we are taught we are incomplete until that's the case, let you make your life something that you're going to look back and say, like, how did I get here?
Yeah. Oh my God. I wish like everybody could hear that because we're so, I feel like so many people are so thoughtless about having children in order to tick off a box that it's like whatever man, whatever man I can kind of shapeshift into being like the sperm donor for my child. But it's like that child is going to be shaped by you and this person. Make sure that you're doing it with a man that like is emotionally safe, is emotionally regulated, knows himself. Like so many women are frivolous about dating to try to like get accepted and validated by a man and not thinking about like, will this person be a good father? Like,
Absolutely. And
ooh,
I think in terms of outcomes of children, they've done studies on this. Like the most profound outcome in how a child experiences themselves in the world is how that, you know, their mother is treated and experienced,
yes.
and that has such an impact on certainly like young men and how they treat women, but like also
Yeah.
how they feel about the feminine within themselves. So if you are with a man who is not like really loving and considerate and respectful of your feminine energy, he will
Yeah.
teach that to his children. And
Right.
yeah, there's so much to like really be present with, and it's not from the space of fear. It's just trusting when it's aligned. I don't have to force it, and I don't have to be in fear and making it happen. I will just
Yeah.
be so inspired by the person I'm meant to share life with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and because we also like I mean, this is sort of like going back to earlier in the conversation, but we kind of recreate our parental dynamics too. So it's
Mm.
not like, you're just being intentional about the relationship that you're modeling to your child.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, if it was up to me, I feel like everyone would be like, we're in a big timeout from dating, all
Yeah.
the things. We're going to do some deep shadow work, and then
Yes.
we're going to
No
reemerge.
one's, 100%. No one is allowed to have sex. Let's
I'm
just
like,
all
don't touch each
discover
other.
ourselves.
Just like put your hands where I can see them.
What's the thing in middle school dances where it's like you put your
Right.
arms apart
That's
from
me
each
right now. I'm
other?
like, everyone, hands where I can see
100%.
them. Don't touch each
Yes,
other.
exactly. Everyone
Yeah.
just stop because I you said this earlier, but you also you spoke about it on a class that I attended and I loved this was getting into a
Mm.
relationship when it's justified. Can
Yes.
you speak more on that because that is like truly so good.
Mm. Thank you. Yeah, it's so funny. We all sort of joke that we understand that the Jerry Maguire, like you complete me thing was just a phrase, and that's not what we really feel. And yet, societally, we still believe very strongly that we are incomplete until we're in a partnership. It's like so and so great. Why hasn't she found anyone? Or like, at what
Yeah.
point are you going to do the thing and settle down and make this happen? And I think, I really have shifted and just had this knowing at some point that like what we are evolving into as a human race and the way that we meet one another relationally is that we're going to live lives that are so full and so in alignment with what we came here on a soul level to do, that we're going to stop believing that we're incomplete until we're in a partnership. But then when
Yeah.
it is justified, because the person that I have collided with, that I know for sure could have only been orchestrated by the divine, this collision between us, then yes, absolutely. And when I meet that person, the alchemy of what our relationship dynamic creates between the two of us will be such fire that it's like, of course, there's like no other option but for us to create in the world together. But yeah, I think a lot of what that is going to require is us returning to the mentality of a village. And you see a lot of this happening already, that people are just putting more of an
Yeah.
emphasis on their friendships and on creating community. And I think that's beautiful. And I think we need to get back to a place where we know how to be in relationship with one another, across some of these like gender lines, if we're speaking heterosexually, where we're not just sort of in this dehumanizing space of like, are you someone I could date? If not, I don't, like we can't be friends and all of these
Yeah,
things.
right.
And just like really coming back to our humanity with one another, I think on so many levels, for so many reasons, we really need to learn to do that again. And then
Totally.
like slowing our roll a little bit on the pair bonds and partnering off, because
Yeah.
from what I've seen, there's a lot that we need to rewire in how we're meeting what it is to be in relationship with another soul.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. It's like because we put so much pressure on like going on these dates and being like, "Are you my person? Are you my husband?" Some of my best guy friends are guys that like I went on a date with, and we both mutually were like, didn't say this out loud, but we were like, it's not a match in that context. But they're like some of my best friends, and they've led me to other opportunities, and just like forming this community around me of just really intentional, deep relationships
Yes.
is like life. That's it.
I love
That's
that. And it's
know.
it's really healing a lot of times too. I don't know if you've
Yes.
experienced
Oh
this,
my
but
God.
like being in relationship with men with no agenda, just a friendship, like deeply
Yes.
being mirrored in that experience of a man who I am safe with has been so unbelievably healing. And I just wish more women, but certainly men as well, had an opportunity to have that experience, because I think there's so much that we've been harmed by in the ways that we've been socialized around gender.
100%. Yeah, because there's so many women that I know that are very doubting of a healthy relationship because they actually don't know any healthy masculine men. And I think
Yes.
what's really been a saving grace for me is having that modeled in my brother, for example, and in like a lot of the men that have come into my life recently as friends, is realizing like, oh my gosh, there are men out there that are growing emotionally, that are spiritually curious, that are just kind, wonderful, healthy men. And then that opens up your kind of range of possibilities of what's available. But a lot of people like don't have that modeled to them, which is hard.
Yeah, I want to name that like I pay a lot of attention to the energetic frequency of people's content, and I notice you speaking life into things like that. And I think
I try, yeah.
first of all, well done, because I think we
Thank you.
just need more of that in the way that we're curating content and like what we're putting out into the world. It sort of becomes like spells for the world that we want to
Yes.
see, right?
Yeah.
And I hear a lot of like, patriarchal men and men are awful and all of them are just like broken, and I'm like, oof, we have got to
Yeah.
stop
Because you're
speaking
going to keep
life.
having that experience. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, what do I want to see and how do I speak to it when I see the beautiful things that I want, and when there are men who are doing the work of really healing and integrating and all of those things, like celebrating the heck out of our brothers. Like, how do we do more of
Yeah.
that? And so thank you for being someone that's showing up in that way. I think it's really, really important.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, because when I meet men that are doing the work, it's like hell yes, like yes.
Mm.
It's like so. It's just like it makes my soul so happy to see a man like going there and fighting a lot of the societal conditioning, and I just yeah. I think we'll also see more and more men start to go there because I think women in general are spiritually growing very quickly, and that's kind of like requiring men to step up if they want to be in partnership.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're doing it, and there's a lot that's shifting at a really rapid pace right now. But I think that's by design. I think that's what
Yeah.
we sort of knew this time in history was going to ask us to recalibrate, and it's exciting if we choose to see it that way.
Yeah, it is exciting. Okay, before we wrap up, I guess one piece of advice you have for, I don't know if I want to do women and men separately, but maybe. Yeah, just generally speaking, what you
Oh,
wish the women listening could know and men.
okay. I'm like, I love when someone's never asked me a question before. I'm like,
Put you
ooh,
on
I like this.
put you on the spot.
Yeah, that's a good one. So, yeah, I think for the women, it would be It's honestly, it's so much of what I'm working on right now. And I would say this to men and women. It's like, you are the love of your life. You are the thing that you've been waiting for. And everything that you want in this life is on the other side of that understanding. I promise, promise, promise. Like, it makes me
I
emotional
promise
even
too.
thinking about it.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
truly is. Like, when you can be in that knowing, everything just starts to come together for you. But as long as you're looking for it somewhere out there, it doesn't live there. And I do want more of that for our brothers. I don't know if you saw that show Adolescence, but like, I feel like everyone who cares about men and what's happening with masculinity, I can't stop talking about that show because it was just really an important dialogue. But I think
Yeah.
we don't have enough conversations about curating a strong sense of self in men, and that men are sort of thought or taught to think that, this protect, provide, procreate template is where their value resides. And that's still just like really externally focused. And it's like, who do I want to be for me? How do I get into the space of me being proud of who I am? And so I think regardless of gender, that would be my wish for everyone, right? That you get to be in love with yourself. You get to be in love with this life that you're living. And the more that you can do that, I promise you will show up relationally for everyone else, in a way that you're proud of.
Yeah. That's very, very beautifully said. Thank you so much. Where can people find you, and tell us a little bit about like your retreats and your offerings and everything if everyone wants to dive into your world a little more?
Oh, thank you, love. You're such a gift. So I do retreats throughout the year. I've got some coming up on the East Coast. One at, well, I don't know when this will air, but I'm going
It's
to be
okay. I
at
can say it
um,
anyway.
Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York, and then
Oh,
Kripalu
amazing.
in Massachusetts. And then I normally do, like annual retreats. So you can just check out DeneLogan.com and see like whatever is alive. I'm like sort of like, we should
What's
do a
happening?
retreat. I don't know. Like, but lots of retreats that are coming up. And then,
Okay, amazing. Do you have
I'm
any
on
programs
Instagram.
or online courses or anything like that, or just
I
one-on-one
do.
counseling that you do?
Yeah, I'm doing more group work, the retreat work, but I also do like a 10-week course periodically throughout the year, and it's more of like a group coaching intensive. And I love that because I think there's just so much healing that comes from having our experience mirrored back to us in a group container. And it's pretty intimate, but it ends up like everybody gets close and, stays in touch and all of those things. And I love that type of community building. So that's something
Yeah.
I'm really passionate about doing more of in the future.
Okay. Amazing. And then on Instagram, you're Dene Logan.
Dene.Logan. Yes.
Dene.Logan.
Someone
Very
had
important.
Dene Logan. I
Who
don't know.
is Dene
I'm
Logan?
like, I don't know who has my name. That's someone out there. No, I'll meet her
The
eventually.
real
Love
Dene
that for her.
Logan. Yeah, exactly.
Love that for you. Yeah.
Love that for you. Thank you so much for being on. This is like just such an incredible conversation. And like,
Aw.
I think the nuanced, rich convo about dating that needed to be had.
Well, just such a gift to meet you. I feel like, the intelligent change folks that brought together the retreat that we met at. I'm like, I've never ceased to be amazed at like the incredible people that I have
I
met
know.
through that.
Such a good group. Such a good group. Talk about divine universal orchestration there.
That's it.